All right. This is just going to be my video going over how to connect your C# ASP.NET application in Elastic Beanstalk to an RDS database. For this video, I'm going to be deploying mission 7 from our 413 class. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to download the plugin. So if you come to Learning Suite, no one's still my net ID. Yeah, gotta find my phone for Duo. Alrighty, sorry about that. I forgot that I'm using a different computer than I usually use, so had to log in with Duo. So if you come under 404, you go to the schedule, and then you come down to the 18th, scroll down, there is a document here about how to run the plugin. This is a document that I largely followed when I did the RDS database. And if it ever loads, we'll scroll down. Oh gosh, scroll too far. There's a link in here that you can use to download the plugin. Oh gosh, this thing is crazy fast scrolling when I don't want it to be. Okay, there we go. You'll click this link and it will take you to Amazon AWS where you can download the plugin for Visual Studio. Please download whichever one is appropriate for your Visual Studio. I hope none of you are running 2013 to 2015, but if you want, it's there. I'm going to download the 2017 one. And we'll click download. And then this will take a few seconds to download. I'm just going to do this video straight through with no scripting because you can just speed it up with a video speed up tool if you get bored. All right, you open up this package and it takes a second to open. Alrighty. Then it starts initializing the installer and then it'll ask you to install some stuff. I have Visual Studio 2019 running. So when it installs, it's going to ask to close Visual Studio 2019 because it needs to make some updates to it. All right, so I give it permission to make changes to my computer. And it is initializing. Okay, I take it back. I am going to pause this video because this is taking forever. Okay, so it finally loaded, and I'm going to click install. And it says, hey, these tasks need to be ended. This is important. When I first installed this, I didn't realize that these were tasks that needed to be ended. I thought those were things that were getting installed, but you need to end these tasks before it can continue with the modification. So I'm going to click end tasks. And you'll notice it closed my Visual Studio down here at the bottom. And now it's installing the toolkit for Visual Studio 2019. And I'm going to pause until this installation is done. Alrighty, it looks like it's finishing up, so I figured I'll let it run the last few steps while we're recording. If this turns out to be a long while, I may end up pausing the video again and then resuming. Wowzers. That took forever and a half. So we'll now close that. And I accidentally clicked on a link. Alrighty. So now that that's installed, we'll open up our Visual Studio again. Open up 2019. And it does take a minute to load, which I'm sure you all know by now. Alrighty, that took forever to load. I'm on an older computer, so it does take a while for things to load. So we'll open up the repository of the project. Sorry, we'll open up the project that you want to deploy. Mine was cloned from the Mission 7 repository that I built, but you can deploy whichever one you'd like. So we'll wait for our Solution Explorer to load. And hopefully it does at some point in the next 2 hours. Okay, it finally loaded. So now we're going to go to the solution view, and we'll click on this solution to load in the solution. And that will take another few minutes to load. Okay. In a second, our project's going to be open. Yours may have defaulted to solution view. Because I cloned mine from a GitHub repository, it defaults to a folder view. But as you can see, this is my Mission 7 project. It's got a migrations folder, models, view, controller, the usual shebang. So you're going to go into this view, and then this AWS Explorer is the new thing that you just installed using that installation tool. You are going to add an AWS credentials profile. I'm going to give it a name of default. Now it needs an access ID and a secret access key. So I'm going to switch over to my learner lab. I'm going to open up that lab, go into modules, go into the learner lab. And because this is like my fourth take of this video, my learner lab should be running after it loads. Yep, looks like it's still running and I have about 2 hours left on it. Should be enough time for this video. So under your AWS details, you'll see this AWS CLI. You'll click show and it will give you your access ID key right here. So I'll copy that and I'll switch over and I'll paste that. Your access ID key changes every time you start your learner lab, so I'm not too concerned about showing you my credentials. This is actually important because you will need to do the last step that I'm doing every time you restart your learner lab. So we'll come over here, we'll paste in the secret access key, and we'll hit OK. Now, you are going to see an error. It's going to say on this side panel, unable to connect to AWS, which is fine. We want to see that. So now we're going to open up our file folder structure, File Explorer, and then we're going to go to our local disk in our C drive inside of users, and you're going to select your username. In my case, this is a BYU rental computer, so it's BYU rental. Find AWS, then you'll find the credentials file. Open up that credentials file, and I honestly just edit it in Notepad. You can use Visual Studio Code, whatever you want to use, but you'll need to edit this file. What you're going to put in there is this entire gray box. So all the way from the bottom, including this default keyword, copy that, go over to your credentials file, select all, and paste it, and then save. As soon as you've saved it, you'll see that you are now connected to AWS. And you can see your RDS databases, and you can see which ones you have, which is fantastic. I have spun up quite a few because I've been trying to record this video several times. And I've made several mistakes, so I had to start over. Anyway, we are now going to go over to our learner lab. We're going to open up AWS. Now, when you spin up your Elastic Beanstalk instance, there was an option under that instance to add an RDS database, or you can do it the way I'm about to do it. You can go to RDS, and it takes a second to load. So if you click the Add a Database button on your Elastic Beanstalk, you'll see it here under the database instances. These are all the ones that you've currently running. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to create a database. And then I'm going to use the I'm going to use the standard create method. Then we're going to pick a MySQL database because this is the one I've had the most success connecting to. And then we'll scroll down. We'll pick the free tier because I don't want to pay an arm and a leg. And then we're going to leave the name, the identifier as database3. Our username is admin. And because you're going to see this password later in plain text, I'm going to use password as the password. And then we will confirm the password. And then under instance configuration, we'll leave everything the same. Under storage, we'll leave everything the same. Under connectivity, we will need to make one change, and that is that we want the access to be public because we need to be able to connect to it from our computer. And then you can choose an existing security group. I'm going to leave it as the default one, and then everything else stays the same. And then you click Create Database. Now, this will take 10 minutes. For the sake of time, I am going to connect to a database I have previously spun up following those exact same steps, and it's this database 2. So you'll open up your database in your console, and you'll see connectivity and security. There are some important things to see here, and that is the endpoint. And you also will, so this endpoint is your server location. MySQL has a different connection string than SQLite, so you can go to connectionstrings.com/MySQL, and they have the connection string for MySQL. If you change that to /Postgres, they'd have the connection string for Postgres. We spun up a MySQL database, so we're just going to grab this standard connection string. Because of the way you built your ASP.NET applications, and because you've written the code the way you did, you can make changes in very few places, and instead of connecting to a SQLite server, it will connect to a MySQL database. So we're going to replace this connection string with the connection string that we copied from connectionstrings.com. So the server, my server address, this is the endpoint on your database. So if we come back to our RDS management console, we'll see that the endpoint is database. Make sure you copy all the way to Amazon AWS.com. Many people have gotten mixed up and they haven't copied the whole thing. You want to copy the entire connection string. If you are using the database that you added using your Elastic Beanstalk, that database will have a slightly different name, but it will still end in AmazonAWS.com. Come over here, replace the server address in the connection string. The database, you're going to need to go find the database name. And you'll come back to your console. You'll come to configuration. Under configuration, right here, you'll see DB name. If it has a dash, it means it is the same as your database instance ID, which will be the case if you spin up your own database in RDS. If you spun up your database using Elastic Beanstalk, then it will have a name here, and it will probably be EBDB, which I think stands for Elastic Beanstalk Database. In our case, we spun it up in RDS, so this is the name as well as the instance ID. If they're different, use the database name. So we'll put in the name of our database, and then the user ID, we'll need to go grab our user ID, which we had as admin, which we left as admin. You can definitely change that. I chose not to change it when I set up the database, so it's still admin. And then my super secret password is password. And we'll save that. The next thing we need to do is in our connectivity and security, we need to look at our security group. So we'll click on the link to our security group under VPC security groups. And we'll need to edit it to allow traffic to come in from outside of the server. So we will edit the inbound rules right here. It says inbound rules. Edit inbound rules. So you can see, well, I was hoping it was going to load a little faster than that. Edit inbound rules. All right, you can see that it is set up to allow all traffic, but we are going to need to add a new rule. We're going to allow all traffic from IPv4 anywhere. So basically, any connection it will accept, and we'll save these rules. This is important. If you did not make your database public, or if you do not change the security rules, then your request will time out and it will throw this big nasty error that really just says, hey, we couldn't connect to your database because you didn't give us permission. So now that that has been successfully updated, we'll come back to our Visual Studio. Our connection string is all correct, but if you recall in startup.cs, we have options, use SQLite. And we want to switch that to use MySQL. In order to do that, we need to add a package using the NuGet package manager. So you'll right click on your solution file, manage NuGet packages. And then we're going to browse. We're going to search for MySQL. And let me close the AWS tab for now. And you're looking specifically for, oh, I scrolled way too fast. You're looking for MySQL entity, oh, not .entity, MySQL entity framework core. And you are going to look for the version we're going to install. Maybe you can install other versions. I've not tried them. So if you want to play it safe, the version I always use is 3.1.30, and we'll install that. And it takes some time to install that. When that's done, we'll start the video again. And I'm going to pause while it installs. And I'm resuming because it gave me this pop-up and asked me if I want to make these changes, and I'm going to say yes, and that I accept you can make these changes to my packages. Alrighty, it's installed. Now, we're going to come back to our startup.cs. This is the one where you use SQLite, and up at the top, we're going to add a new line. And we're going to say, using MySQL dot entity framework core. And then down here under options, we'll do options dot use MySQL. Now, some of you may have installed other packages for MySQL, so this is important. The other packages have different capitalizations of MySQL. You're going to want to make sure to use the one that says use my, and then SQL should be all capitalized, exactly as you see it here. So use MySQL. We'll save that. And then we've created migrations, and that was for a SQLite database. So we're going to delete those migrations. So just delete your migrations folder. May take a second, depending on how fast your computer is. You're going to right click on your mission, and you're going to say, open in terminal. And if the terminal ever opens, we'll see what to do next. Alrighty, so we'll say .NET EF migrations, add initial. You can change that name if you want to, but we're adding an initial migration, so I'd recommend doing it that way. So it's going to start building, and then the build should succeed, and it'll take a few minutes to run. Well, hopefully not a few minutes, hopefully a few seconds. Alrighty, so the build failed. And if this ever happens, we did install a new package, and so we may need to close and restart our Visual Studio. So I'm just going to close it. I would like to save the changes that I made to my solution file, and it takes a second to close. So I will pop back on as soon as I'm reopening it. Alrighty, just reopened, so open up whatever mission you're going to be working on. Apologize, I keep pausing the video. This is a really old computer, and it's struggling, and I didn't think you guys wanted to wait through all of the loading times. As a matter of fact, I'm considering pausing it again because Visual Studio is taking a while to load. Alrighty, it finally loaded. So we'll switch to Solution View, unless you were already in Solution View, in which case you're going to right click on your project name. In my case, I'm still switching to Solution View. Alrighty, right click on your solution name, open up your terminal. Wait for 3.5 hours for your terminal to load. All right, I'm gonna pause because this is taking forever. All right, it loaded. So now we'll do .net. Actually, I ran the command, so it should be in our history. So we're gonna hit the up arrow. It's .net EF migrations, add initial, and we'll run it. And it'll start our build. So I'm leaving this running just in case there's an error. I want you to be able to see it so that we can see how to solve it. Feel free to speed this part up. Sorry. Actually, feel free to speed the whole thing up, honestly. I don't care how fast you watch this, or even if you watch it at all. But yeah, hopefully this doesn't take forever. Perfect. Build succeeded. That is what we wanted to see. And when my terminal finally gives me back the prompt, we'll run the next command, which is just the .NET EF database update. So we'll run .NET EF database update. So what's going to happen is it's going to try and connect to your database. This is why you needed to set it to be publicly accessible and why you needed to set the permissions so that it allow traffic on all ports from any IP address. So we'll do .NET EF database update. If you have forgotten either of those commands, after the build succeeds, this will time out and it will throw a big, long, nasty error. So you'll just need to go make sure that your connection string is correct. You'll make sure that your database is set to accept traffic and that it's publicly accessible. If we've done everything correctly, then it should say build started, build succeeded. Then it'll take a little bit of time to run the migrations on the database, and then it will say done, which is, I've done both of those steps, so I'm really hoping that this will just say done. Build succeeded. Ooh. Alrighty. We have this lovely error. And if you read it, I said I want to create tables categories. This is my fourth take of this video. I have already run migrations, so I already created the categories table. So in order to demonstrate that migrations actually do work, I'm going to go into our app settings JSON, and we're going to change our server to that new database that I spun up while you were watching. So we're going to go to RDS, Relational Databases. And we're going to our databases that are currently running. And we'll find database 3. This was the one that we created in this video. And we'll make sure it's publicly accessible. We'll go check out the security groups. It is in the same security group, so it should have the same rules. But we want to double check because the more errors we can avoid, the better. So we'll go to inbound rules. We'll edit those inbound rules. Wow. We'll edit those inbound rules and make sure that we're allowing all traffic from any port. And because I did not make any changes, it's going to say I didn't make any changes. And I've got to move my little zoom controls out of the way, and we'll click cancel. All right, we'll go back to our RDS database. Wow, there's just not a good place for these zoom controls. Alrighty, then we'll go to our database instances. Then we'll go to database 3. That's the one we want to connect to. Then we'll grab the entire endpoint because this is a different endpoint. We'll copy it. We'll come over here and we'll change our endpoint here to our new database. And then we'll go to configuration to find the DB name has a dash, which means it's just the same as the instance ID. Again, with Elastic Beanstalk, it'll probably be EBDB, Elastic Beanstalk database. And we'll change the database name to database 3. The ID is, oh boy, the ID is admin, and the password is password. And then we'll save it. Now here, we've already created the migrations, so we just need to run them. We'll do .NET EF database update. Because this is a new database, it will not have the categories table inside of it because I will not have already run migrations on that database. So the build started. Build succeeded. Now this is the part where people usually run into errors with their security. So as long as you set up your security groups, it'll just say done. If you don't, it'll give you a big nasty error. Then at the top of that error, you'll scroll up to the top and it'll say something about a timeout. And you'll just need to go make sure that you set your database to be publicly accessible and that you have allowed traffic from all places on the network. So if we want to test this before we deploy our application, we can just run our application. Because our connection is now to that server, the database on this, yes, I trust my computer. Yes. Sorry, this is my first time running a .NET application on this computer. And it'll take a second to load because .NET applications are not historically known for being very fast to load. If you want to just fast forward the video, I'm just demonstrating that if you view all movies, it will pull all the movies from the database. This database is your AWS RDS database. This is your live database, and it is pulling it from the server. So now all we need to do is deploy our project. So we'll come to our Solution Explorer. We'll right-click on our solution name, and we'll click Publish to AWS. Right-click, Publish to AWS. Lovely. Normally it lets me do that. I've been told that if you publish to Elastic Beanstalk Legacy, it should work. We're going to redeploy to an existing environment. We're going to pick our skill check environment. We're going to hit next. And we're going to hit next. And we're going to hit deploy. So you can see down here, it is publishing. It's determining the projects to restore. Actually, we can come to our toolbox, not our toolbox, and go view. Come to our AWS Explorer. Check out Virginia East, refresh the console. And we can look at our Elastic Beanstalk. And we can look at our skill check and our skill check environment. You can see uploading, progress 53%, 96, creating new application, configuring the settings, and it's ready. Alrighty. And it gives us this fancy URL. If we click that URL, our website opens and we can view all movies. And there they are, and it is running, and it is live. Alrighty. So that concludes this video on how to publish your Elastic Beanstalk project with an RDS database. Hopefully that was helpful. Sorry it took so long, and I'm sorry about the poor software, but hopefully it's helpful. All right, have a good night.